Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right, little height. Is that better? Yeah, great. Okay. So my name is Jovan C. Speller-Reboyar. I'm the executive director of the Great Northern Festival. I am thrilled to be here with you all. I have to say that I've been looking forward to this particular panel since the idea emerged. I was like, yes, we have to do this. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is being able to host a platform where we can have an impact at a really critical decision point in people's lives. So that's choosing work, choosing a career, or changing a career, right? These are really important moments, I think, throughout your life. For youth, for sure. So I hope that there's some young folks here today that are able to get inspired by our wonderful panel of speakers, but also folks who maybe are looking for more values-based, missions-based, work that aligns with their beliefs about the world and about the ways in which we need to shift our impact. So I hope that you all enjoy the speakers that we have coming up. I cannot wait. So I'm gonna kind of keep it brief, but let's just get into it. Okay, so during the next hour, we are going to hear from 7 dynamic professionals about the innovative and creative ways they bring climate action and sustainability into their work and how they do it. If you are inspired by their path, you might be able to follow in their footsteps. And we are going to have 7 folks, so I know that we're not going to be able to get to a true Q&A at the end of this panel, but they will be here and available to you and your questions in the hallway after. So just make sure that as they're talking, if you have questions, if there are things that you want to jot down to make sure to come around to, we'll be doing that after in the hallway, okay? Take notes. All right, so each speaker will give a spark talk, a 5-minute look into their story and work. I'll be here to move us through our time and introduce each speaker. There likely won't be time at the end, like I just said, but again, you will be able to talk to them in the hallway, and also in the hallway, please note that, we've had some amazing conversations here. You're gonna see a few different pieces of paper with QR codes. One of those codes will lead you to a donation spot where you can support our work. And also there's more QR codes where you can get information on how you can get involved in some of the climate action that's going on in Minnesota. So be sure to look out for that, as well as a full schedule of events in the hallway. All right, so now, without further ado, let's get into it. So our first speaker is going to be Matt Scott. So Matt Scott is the Director of Storytelling and Engagement at Project Drawdown, where he amplifies unheard stories and voices in the climate movement and helps people find their role in climate solutions. He hosts the short documentary series Drawdown's Neighborhood and previously led the NASA International Space Apps Challenge. Whoa. So please join me in welcoming Matt to the stage.
How's everyone doing? How's everyone else doing? There we go. I'm going to take this mic out. All right. There we go. And thanks, everyone, for being here today. How's the Great Northern treating you so far? There we go. There we go. I'm just making sure the clicker's on and working. Wait, it's not on. Okay, we got this. There we go. All right. Yeah, thanks, everybody. And again, I'm Matt Scott. I'm the Director of Storytelling and Engagement at the global nonprofit Climate Solutions Resource Project Drawdown. So excited to kick us off and to get this out of the way so I stopped sweating in my seat. I'm sure a lot of us could relate. But I'm going to talk about the work I do, which is focused on climate storytelling. And I want to start out by asking you all to consider this question. What comes to mind when you think of climate change? Think about it. Maybe there are causes of climate change that come to mind. Maybe it's the outcomes. Maybe you're one of the people who I personally love, who's thinking of the solutions. But when 14,000 people were asked this question just a few years back, 44% responded with outcomes, 18% responded with the causes, and only 3% responded with solutions, which is kind of a problem because we need people to think of solutions if we want solutions to come to life. We need people to know that they're a reality. We need solutions to be top of mind. And I always think it's interesting that folks often think of polar bears first and foremost when it comes to climate instead of humans and their neighbors and their communities and themselves. That people think of the disaster, people think of scientists, people think of folks like Al Gore. But we need people to think about themselves and the roles that they could play. We need you to think about the roles you could play and about yourselves and the power you have to do something. And so, at Project Drawdown, again, we focus primarily on climate solutions. We are a science-based organization. The 2017 book Drawdown, which I'm sure a number of you have, focuses on that. But the work that I do actually focuses on storytelling. And so about 3.5 years ago, I joined the organization to found the Drawdown Stories program, which, as Javon mentioned, focuses on passing the mic to voices that often go unheard in the climate space. And I'll get more into my story and what motivates it. As you can imagine, part of that is my own identities, though, as a young Black queer person, just not seeing myself and my voices represented. And I think all of us, regardless of like our identities, whether it's race or sexual orientation or gender or hobbies and interests, like some of you I know out there probably love Dungeons and Dragons. Like you might not see that represented in climate stories, but that's kind of what I work to change in the work that I do. And actually, there are a lot of people who love Dungeons and Dragons featured in some of the work I'm going to mention. Sure. But it is kind of funny because one of the things that we do so poorly when it comes to climate is communicate, as human as communication is. And I won't get into this too in depth, but this is a diagram based on work by psychologist and economist Per Espen-Stoknes, who talks about climate communication and the impact of just throwing climate news, throwing statistics and data at people, and it results in all of this. A sense of distance, a sense of doom, a sense of cognitive dissonance, climate denial, and conflicts with identity. People not feeling like they belong because of their identities. But that's where the power of stories comes in. Because when we tell stories that are social and feature characters that we could relate to, when we tell stories that are simple and not super overwhelming, friendly for our brains, when we tell stories that signal progress when it comes to the science and emissions, but also that show how we're supporting the things we care about, like, believe it or not, more than climate change, like health, like jobs, like safety, like security, like equity. Those stories resonate with folks, and that's really what I focus on in the work I do, is helping people find their story and tap into that in order to connect with others and show others that this climate problem and climate solutions are closer than we sometimes think and feel with the current narrative. When I think of climate stories and when I think of storytelling overall, I often think of this image, which is me about 30 years ago with my dad. And I, like most kids, loved stories growing up. Actually, who here knows what this is? Just shout it out. Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Yeah, is anyone going to sing the theme song? Okay, we'll save that we'll do the karaoke after of this. But I loved this story, and I loved stories like it. But as I got older, I moved away from loving the diverse climate stories out there to, my dad being the hero that I looked to. And one of the reasons for that was because within his story, this is actually one of the schoolrooms that he grew up in in the 1950s during the Civil Rights era in Prince Edward County, Virginia. And in case you don't know the story of Prince Edward County, spoiler alert, it's a place that, due to resistance to integrate and bring folks together, Black students didn't have access to schools for about 5 years. The Virginia government said, we're closing all of the schools because we don't want Black students and white students to go to school together. And the reason I think of this story is because my dad's story, my dad, dapper man in the suit over here, is someone who went on to leave home, lived with strangers, white strangers, in a time that was especially contentious with race in our country, went on to not only meet my mom, but graduate from Harvard Business School, serve as a captain in the military, graduate from a historically black college and university, have a family. There's me in the orange, still this cute. I wish. There's me in my awkward teen phase with my dad who started his own business. The list goes on, right? My dad making a positive impact in the community. And when he passed away in 2017, what I realized is that so often our stories that are really impactful, that have the power to push us and inspire us and, move us to do great things in the world, are often not heard. And so my dad passing away was actually what drove me to begin to go out and interview folks and to share their stories and amplify their voices, which is what I do within my work at Project Drawdown. And so the key series that I have at Project Drawdown, where I'm so thankful to be able to own and be in my identities fully and show up fully and even talk about my dad and his story and inspiration at times, is Drawdown's Neighborhood, which you could check out at drawdown.org/neighborhood. That's drawdown.org/neighborhood. I see some folks typing it down. And, I have the link there too. Look at me. But I'll say, one of the things I'm most proud of, beyond all of the cities we've been to, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, we've been in the Bronx, in Newark, New Jersey, New Haven, Connecticut, the Bronx. I missed another. New Orleans was the one I missed. And of course, the Twin Cities we've featured folks in for Drawdown's Neighborhood. I love that we've been able to amplify so many stories and voices that are often overlooked within the climate space. And each and every person I look at, I see a bunch of people up in the middle right there who are all in the Twin Cities making an impact. I see a bunch of people who have stories that are overlooked. And I see a bunch of people who have stories that have the power to inspire someone else. And so the thing I love most about the work that I do is just this reminder that I want to share with all of you that our stories have power. I find that I share my story so often, and even talking about my dad and his passing and how that influenced me, talking about my identities and how that pushes me to fight for representation. I don't even understand the power of that half the time, and then I see how that affects people and inspires them and pushes them. And the beauty of that is that I'm not the only one with that story. Each of you has a story and has the power to be a hero to move someone forward, and you're going to hear from a bunch of other awesome stories that hopefully have the power to move you to take on whatever career it is in climate and to own your story and hopefully, have a ripple effect with that story to move others toward taking climate action. That's the power of stories overall. And one reason I would encourage each of you to think about what your story is and to share it, that's the one piece of advice I have for you, is that regardless of what that is, regardless of if it feels like it's relevant to climate, that your story has the power to get others on board. And when it comes to climate change and climate solutions, it's an all-hands-on-deck effort. We need all of you. We need all of your stories. And we need all of the stories that we're about to hear from coming up next. So thanks, everyone, for your time. And we'll talk soon. Thank you, Siobhan. I'll get this back in there for you. There we go. Awesome. Thank you.
Amazing. Let's give Matt one more round of applause. Thank you so much for that. Your words couldn't be more true. I'm excited not only to hear the stories that are coming up, but for all of us to be able to reflect as well on our personal stories. And I think that once we have those stories reflected, written down, and we can read them back to ourselves, then we can start to believe in our own power as well. So I love that. Thank you so much for kicking us off. That was amazing. Okay, so let's keep the party going. All right, so next we have a Minnesota native. We have Eddie Landenberger, who began his career in marine engineering and intermodal container terminal design at Parsons Brinkerhoff in New York City. And since 2005, he has been developing a commercial real estate practice focused on primarily industrial, office, retail, business incubator, and multifamily projects in the Twin Cities market. So in addition to real estate, because of course he's multifaceted, as we all are, Eddie spent several years in business brokering and economic development. Eddie also serves as vice president of the Land Bank Twin Cities, where he provides strategy, develops business plans, and manages a strategic acquisitions portfolio. So join me in welcoming Eddie to the stage.
Thanks, everyone. Just make sure I got this. All right. First, a little bit about my journey. Like a lot of people, back in 2006, I was a structural engineer, and I saw the movie An Inconvenient Truth. So thinking about this talk, it's kind of interesting to think about how that was 18 years ago. And so it's been fun to kind of look back at how I got from structural engineering kind of into being able to string together a career in commercial real estate. And why that timeline is interesting is a lot of these photos that are up here I took just in the last couple weeks, and it's crazy to think that that the commercial real estate industry still kind of operates in a way that I would say is kind of lazy, financially over-conservative, and really investment-driven. So I wanted to take this time to kind of shed some light on, or kind of shine some light on an often overlooked part of the commercial real estate industry, which is property management. Property management provides probably some of the lowest hanging fruit of improvements that can be made in this industry to make it more sustainable. Just some numbers here. As of today, there are about 6 million commercial buildings in the U.S. And back in 2022, about 100,000 of those were LEED certified. So LEED certification is a certification that kind of shows it's a building that is sustainable, is certified sustainable. And a lot of times those buildings are new construction, and a lot of attention is paid on the developer and the architect, and they're really important projects. But those comprise only about 17% of all of our of our built environment. The built environment in total affects about 30% of ongoing emissions. So that's a huge chunk, 30%. That if we work on this industry and make it more sustainable, we can have a huge impact on the overall sustainability and climate change work that we do. So here's the need, and this is why I think this is a really important industry to take notice of. I just looked yesterday on Google Jobs, and there are about 200 job openings for property managers and asset managers. And what is so exciting about that is that we are in the middle, it signifies that we are in the middle of a huge generational change. At the Land Bank, I manage about $30 million worth of property. Every year we buy and sell anywhere from $8 to $10 million worth of property. Land banking is like a temporary ownership that I have. So I buy property, I hold it short term, and for affordable housing projects, arts projects, and a bunch of other stuff. But what it allows me to do is it allows me to see a lot of property. And so when I go to a property like this one last week, it just amazes me that these are the conditions that I see. And it shows a lot that, and these are buildings that are owned by private equity firms or, wealthy individuals that have money to put the improvements into these buildings. But the way that a lot of I could spend a lot of time talking about this afterwards if you want to talk about kind of, the inputs into the industry and why investment, chooses not to embrace a lot of sustainable opportunities. I'm happy to talk to you about that. But what I'm trying to do here is kind of just, I think, illustrate that the property management industry can be the connection, the work on the ground that actually comes out and sees these conditions, tee up the changes that can be made and make them happen and convince the owners that this is what needs to be done. We are seeing more and more conglomeration in ownership. Less and less people are owning more and more real estate. And what that means is that there are less hands on deck to actually do the day-to-day work. And I think that presents such a wonderful opportunity for the next generation that is climate, climate conscious, has a climate mission to get into this industry and make change. Because when people are there doing the work, making the choices, and property management is a job of choices. So if you have a property management job, you're choosing who does the work. So, if you want to choose, a plow company and you want, maybe someday there's going to be EV plows, you can make that choice. You could choose that vendor and you can affect that change. It's all these little incremental changes. This development here, by the way, this developer, I think, clear-cut a bunch of trees to put this building here and then to kind of, turn the knife, covered half of it with Chemlon. Well, that's something that a property manager can affect. They can say, well, why do we need all of this lawn? Why can't we have, something that is more environmentally friendly? And then on top of that, why do we have all these like gas-powered blowers blowing leaves, on this property? Why do we even blow leaves? Like, leaves are good for the grass anyway. So you can have this be an agent of change on the ground level and make those choices and choose those vendors and employ these methods. I used to have a chip on my shoulder when I first started in the industry. Oh, I don't have enough capital. I can't buy buildings. I can't do exactly what I want and employ heat pumps and insulation and all this. But the truth is the resources are there. There's billions of dollars coming our way from the government through Biden's Investing in America agenda and the Inflation Reduction Act. And the money is there, and the investors want these changes to happen. But they don't have the full workforce and the amount of interest coming from the entire industry to fully embrace it and make it happen. So I just wanted to point this out and let you know that this is a very accessible field and one that any one of you doesn't need to go back to college to get a different degree to get into, can work your way up, make an amazing living, and enact change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eddie. I particularly love this because real estate is like a huge mystery to me. It's so, and like just to have somebody there to demystify a lot of this, is such an asset, such a resource. So thank you for lending your voice and your time. And I know that we'll be hollering at you after the session. So thank you. All right, let's get into the next speaker. So next we have Nicole Crowder. Nicole Crowder is a renowned furniture designer and upholsterer whose work focuses on storytelling and the creation of modern heirlooms, which I just love that phrase, modern heirlooms. Her first custom furniture collection was released with World Market in 2022. It's gorgeous. And she is currently writing a book that explores the rich heritage of Black American craft and trades. In addition to her design work, Nicole serves as the editor-at-large for MSP Home and Design magazine and consults for small businesses and interior design projects as well. Please welcome Nicole to the stage.
Hello. Oops. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. You might be inclined to squint and tilt your head a little bit to think about upholstery as a climate career, but I certainly did as well when I first started. But Furniture design and the furniture industry rivals the fashion industry in terms of the textile production and waste as well. And so this was something that I was really keen on exploring when I got into this field. According to the EPA, every year the United States wastes or throws away about 12 million tons of furniture alone. And then from 2019 to 2021, there was about $4 billion in revenue just from furniture for offices that we all sort of spent. And I was thinking to myself, does it all have to be new? Is there a way that it can be repurposed or reimagined or recycled? And so that was one of the many questions that I was asking when I got into the career of upholstery. This was 2012 or so initially, from my apartment in Washington, D.C. And I started to think about how can I reimagine furniture as something that we extend the legacy of for families. Let's see if I can get to the next one. All right. So a lot of the work that I do, I'm using repurposed furniture that I'm salvaging either from secondhand sources. A lot of things are donated. Individuals send me furniture. I like to, if I can, find things that are already used instead of buying new, because there's always a way to repurpose and to reimagine the vision for that. All right. Much of the work that I do is rooted in a kind of preservation of lineage. As Javon mentioned, I'm trying to recreate modern heirlooms through upholstery, and there's also a magic to this work a little bit, in that I can reimagine a second, third, or even a fourth lifeline for a piece of furniture and have it go from home to home rather than landfill to landfill, hopefully. This also kind of extended to a collection of children's furniture that I made last year, where I spent some time sourcing through Facebook Marketplace and reaching out to various families to see if I could reimagine children's furniture as something that you kind of continue in the family's lineage instead of disposing it as a child sort of ages out of it. And so I used my nephew, Ari, here as my little model, and he was quite excited about that. Another example of this is, in 2018, I was commissioned to reupholster this settee, which belongs to the Woodlawn Pope Leahy House. At the time, it belonged to George Washington's nephew, Lawrence Lewis. And there was a company, the museum, it was a plantation turned museum. They had commissioned me to reupholster this piece. And up until this point, it hadn't been reupholstered since the 1800s, I would say. And so I'm imagining myself as a descendant of enslaved people, reimagining and working on this, this piece of history here that they themselves at the time couldn't even fully engage with in terms of the house where they were living and working. And this home also was sitting 15 miles from where my apartment in D.C. was. So I was thinking about that bridge of being an ancestor, being a steward of care of furniture, and this project was one of those that kind of turned the tables for me in terms of thinking about the lineage of furniture. It had me thinking that you almost certainly can't sustain something if you don't care for it. And care, you have to embody, whether it's your friendships, your livelihood, certainly your material possessions. And I started to think, how do I care for the furniture that's in my possession? And in turn, how do I have others care for the furniture that's in their possession? And so I sort of wrapped this in an ethos of, if we can teach people how to learn upholstery, if we can show them the different ways of reimagining fabrics that they already have in their homes, or chairs that might be, they were about to throw away or put on curbs, teaching people how to preserve their furniture empowers them, I think, to sort of continue on using it and seeing it as something that perhaps I can reimagine this versus having to buy something new all of the time. I think it's also really important for me as a Black woman, as a Black maker in this space, where people call upholstery as a niche and dying trade. It's really important to empower people with tools and with techniques for how to repurpose furniture for themselves at home. If you can learn how to cut fabric and maybe figure out how many yards you need, you don't buy as much, and therefore as much doesn't go to waste, and as much doesn't then go into landfills. And so I was thinking to myself, how does one kind of engage with this if you wanted to get into this as a climate career? There's all kinds of really fantastic digital workshops. There's in-person workshops. I teach several. I'm teaching, I think, about 6 throughout this year. And I really encourage people, if you want a hands-on experience, upholstery can be a bit of an intimidating trade, but I think it's incredibly powerful to serve as sort of an ancestor or a good stewardess of this earth, and doing that through upholstery. I hope that with empowering people with different ways of reusing textiles, repurposing furniture, taking classes to broaden and expand into a different trade or a skill, that it's one way that even if it's not necessarily your legacy, you're able to improve the legacy for future generations. And so also, if you're looking for ways to recycle or donate furniture or textiles, there's tons of different places maybe in your jurisdiction, but across this country. IKEA has a buyback and resale program, which for a long time they were getting a lot of flack because a lot of their products were not being recycled properly or weren't able to be recycled. And so I really appreciate that larger brands are also considering ways to be, stewards, if you will, of this earth. So a few resources are here for you, and again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them after this. Thank you so much.
First of all, those designs, Nicole Crowder, my heavens, just take over my home. But I do have to say, there's something that Nicole said that I think I wrote down. I'm sure many of you did as well. You can't sustain something that you can't care for, right? That's what we're all trying to be a little bit better at. How do we care for this place, and how do we sustain it? So thank you, Nicole. All right, next up, we have Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones is an entrepreneur, engineer, scientist, and inventor. Basically, brilliant. Before founding Carba, Andrew started and built Activated Research Company, ARC, an innovation firm that develops analytical technology for scientists. ARC's portfolio of products includes a novel NSF-funded detector for pharmaceutical drug development, world-leading technology for CO2 measurement, and tools for analyzing biofuels. I had to read that whole part. That's a lot of okay. All right. He and his work have been the recipient of several awards, including the Neil Armstrong Award of Excellence, Astronaut Scholarship, R&D 100, NSF Graduate Fellow, 35 and Under Young Entrepreneur Award, and the Minnesota Cup Energy Clean Tech winner. Hello, welcome. He holds 5 patents. This human is brilliant. I'm so excited to welcome him to the stage. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing you talk. Come on up.
Hey, everybody. Very excited to be here. Not brilliant, just nerdy. All right, that works. All right, my name is Andrew Jones. I am a scientist, science geek, a chemical engineer, and the co-founder of Carba, which is a local company that's doing carbon dioxide removal technology. Climate change is scary, but I also see it as the biggest opportunity of our lifetime. And I feel incredibly lucky to have the opportunity to work on solutions to this problem. Climate change is here, as you all know. There's really no denying it. And as you can see from this video from NASA, temperatures are rising, and last year was the hottest year on record. And some scientists are saying it's the hottest year in the last 100,000 years. We are getting dangerously close to 1.5 degrees C of warming. And this is all incredibly scary, but rather than get depressed about this, I see this as the greatest opportunity for our generation, and that gives me a lot of hope. What I see is a clear path to solve climate change, and the good news is we don't need any technological breakthroughs to make it happen. So I asked myself 3 years ago, how can I make a bigger impact in this field? And I realized that we already know how to decarbonize. And there's actually 2 things we need to do to maintain our climate below 2 degrees C of warming, where they believe will have some pretty drastic effects. And those 2 things are stop burning fossil fuels. And we actually have technology to do that. We have solar, we have wind, we have nuclear, we have geothermal. And solar has done something incredible. It's gotten incredibly cheap. It's less than 3 cents a kilowatt hour. That was the Obama Sunshot program, and it succeeded. We also need to remove legacy emissions in all scenarios that are put forth. And so that means we need to suck legacy CO2 out of the atmosphere and store it somewhere. And what I realized is that there weren't a lot of technologies to do that. There was a technological gap. And so I got to working 3 years ago on a company and technology to solve this last piece of the climate puzzle. So what my co-founder and I realized is that nature's already given us the best direct air capture machines or CO2 capture machines, right? Plants and trees, they grow, they breathe in and suck in carbon dioxide. They use free solar energy to upgrade that CO2 into cellulose, hemicellulose, lignin, the structure of plants. They self-replicate, they grow without human intervention, and they're beautiful. The problem is they die. And when they die, they're either cut down, they get emerald ash borer, or bark beetle, or they burn down. And when any of that happens, they re-release all that carbon back into the atmosphere as CO2 and, worse yet, methane. And so what if we could create a way to capture and lock up that carbon before it re-releases into the atmosphere? And it turns out there is technology to do that. And so we can take biomass waste. This is the waste that gets piled up and burned at a farm or put into a big compost pile and just sitting there emitting a lot of methane. We can process that biomass before it emits all the CO2 and methane. We can treat it with a technology called pyrolysis to remove its microbial food value. And then we can bury it back underground into abandoned coal mines, pits, and even use it as a filter in landfills to remove forever chemicals. The result is a technology that's orders of magnitude cheaper and lower energy than direct air capture and other permanent removal technologies. And you've probably seen direct air capture has gotten a lot of flack lately because it is being used as a tool for oil companies to continue business as usual, and it uses an enormous amount of energy and water. A lot of people don't talk about the water, but it's a lot as well. And they're not wrong. Anything that uses more than 900 kilowatt hours per ton of CO2 is a non-starter due to the opportunity cost of what you could be using that energy for. So we need to be using energy first to decarbonize and get out of fossil fuels. But like I said before, every single scenario requires some amount of carbon capture. And so we need technologies that can do carbon capture with very low energy. And that's what we can do. We're 2 orders of magnitude less energy than direct air capture, lower lower capital, lower OPEX, and we produce water instead of using it. So if you're looking for a career in climate, I really encourage you, sorry if I can switch that. There we go. Oh, I went too far. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. If you're looking for a career in climate, I really encourage you to think about how you can help. What are your skill sets? What are you passionate about? I hope you could tell I'm very passionate about chemistry and doing this. And for me, it really started with this chance encounter with Professor Lanny Schmidt here at the bottom right of the screen at the University of Minnesota. I was a bright-eyed 18-year-old in 2005, don't do the math, and I started at a freshman seminar that he was giving. And he put up this video right here. You can play it again if you can click on it. And essentially what's happening is a piece of biomass, wood, for example, is falling onto a hot rhodium catalyst and vaporizing. So all those chemical bonds are breaking, and it's turning into hydrogen. It's turning into the building blocks for biofuels, the building blocks for plastics. And he was talking about all this, and I became mesmerized. And I thought it was alchemy. I wanted to learn more, so I said, hey, can I join your lab? I'll work for free. I joined the lab. I ended up meeting Paul Downhauer, who was a graduate student at the time, and took this video. And kind of 20 years later, we founded Carba together. So we started with the godfather of catalytic pyrolysis, and now we're doing pyrolysis, hopefully to save the planet. And so I encourage you all to think about those connections that you've made and keep those connections, and think about any way that you can make an impact in climate change. It doesn't need to be science. There's so many different ways, and I love all the talks today that go into the different ways we can make an impact. And it really is going to take individuals, but also community to make this impact. So thank you for having me. I love this conversation, and nice job, everyone who's spoken so far. Thank you.
Like a wannabe geek, you know? Like, I get it all. I can't repeat it, you know, but I get it. So I also want to mention that it's work like this that gets me as a leader and a director of our great festival thinking more about, like, what can we do to be a better organization, a more sustainable organization. So I'm very excited to be in conversation with Carba about how we can offset our footprint as well. So look forward to more news about that. We are all trying to be in this fight together to make sure that we're leaving this planet better than we found it. All right. Yay, yeah, a little clap. Come on. Right. Cool. All right. Next, we have Ashleyn Przewiecki. So Ashleyn is a seasoned operations manager with over 8 years of experience in the events industry, specializing in sustainable design and social impact. As the founder and creative director at LUUM Collective, she leads a design agency with the mission of incorporating sustainable and social good into the event industry. Her initiatives include a food rescue program and delivering educational experiences for industry professionals. So let's welcome Ashleyn to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Although I consider myself an environmentalist, I really didn't feel welcomed at the sustainability table. I went to college intending to study biology in the College of Health and Science, but my first failed chemistry class made me feel like maybe I wasn't on the right track. I don't know, Andrew. So I pivoted into environmental studies, and most of those classes were focused on conservation, so I moved to communications. I was passionate about sustainability, but I felt defeated, that maybe the space wasn't for me and that I wasn't smart enough to work in that sector. I loved the creative fields that I was involved in, but I kept thinking about sustainability and the climate. I started working in the nonprofit space, and like many in nonprofits, I wore a lot of hats, and I was planning events, and I loved it. I loved how events brought people together. They challenged people. They encouraged people to change how they felt about something just by experiencing it. So I started hosting events to share about the causes that I cared about: sustainable fashion, local food. But there was a disconnect in the industry that I was working in. Events had a dark side. At the end of every fun evening, bags and bags of trash are hauled to the dumpsters. Pounds of food, paper menus, and tons of single-use forks. You know what I'm talking about. In fact, an event of 100 people can produce up to 400 pounds of trash. And with 2.4 million weddings in the US annually, that waste can equal the weight of 2.5 Empire State Buildings. And 15% of that food at every event is wasted. And as an event planner, I started questioning, what can we be doing about this? As a young person in my field at the time, I was always told, this is just how it is. We can't do that because of liability. Zero waste events are impossible, and it just takes up too much time. But I was determined. I had found my space and my purpose, bringing sustainability and my creative experience together in an industry that wasn't talking about sustainability at all. I kept at it. I kept talking about sustainability at every conversation in my work. And eventually, I started to find more people who were also passionate about it and maybe just hadn't spoken up yet. They were waiting for me. They were waiting for me to start. Momentum continued, and I finally quit my job to create the job that I wanted. And I started my own company, LUUM Collective, an event design agency focused on sustainability and in the events and hospitality sector. We've brought together dozens of committed event industry professionals to make an impact and to reduce our collective carbon footprint through waste reduction, local sourcing, seasonal menu design, and food rescue and recovery. This year alone, we rescued over 12,000 pounds of food through our partnership with Second Harvest Heartland and diverted and sorted hundreds of pounds of waste at each event. And we're just getting started. We realize that we can't do it alone, and we know that it takes every person within our industry to see their role. From caterers to venues, planners, and florists, it takes commitment and small changes in our process to make a huge impact together. So we tried to reach out to them and encourage them by sharing what we learned, sharing our failed attempts, providing toolkits, and more space for education and conversation. Many wouldn't consider my work a climate career, but I would beg to differ. I think we all need to see our work as climate-focused. Perhaps it's not the traditional conservation biologist or the environmental scientist that we all think of. So I would like to invite you to join me at my sustainability table. We can all find our intersection of passion and purpose, and you don't even have to label yourself as sustainable. My vision for the industry that I work in is that every event planner is conscious about their environmental impact. They're working to reduce single-use plastic, minimize food waste, bring in composting into all of their events, and design seasonal and locally sourced menus at every single event. Sustainability just becomes the industry norm, the way that we do things now. So my advice to anyone looking for their non-traditional climate career is to stay curious, ask questions, and create the solutions that you want to see. How can you learn from other industries? I learned a lot from food. I learned a lot from fashion. Can you explore online certifications or courses and find your like-minded community? Don't be afraid to be the first one in your sector to start, because likely there are others that are waiting for you. And if you're interested specifically in sustainable events, we're hosting our annual Sustainable Event and Wedding Showcase on February 22nd. It's open to anyone who plans events or they intersect with the industry in any kind of way. And we invite nonprofit, corporate planners, and newly engaged folks to join us in your exploration. We have resources that are free on our website and Instagram for anyone that's interested. So you can find us at LUUM Collective, LUUM, and I hope to see you at our next event, ready to take your seat at the table. Thank you.
So Ashleyn is creating the table, designing the table, inviting folks to the table, expanding the table. I love the emphasis on empowerment and agency. So thank you very much for bringing that to the space. Thank you, Ashleyn. All right, so moving things along. Yes, thank you, Ashleyn. Thank you. All right, next up, we have Jamez Staples. Jamez is the president and CEO of Renewable Energy Partners, a minority-owned solar installation and development company focused on creating opportunities for communities of color to participate in the emerging clean energy sector. Staples is also founder of Northgate Development, a real estate development firm responsible for the Regional Apprenticeship Training Center in North Minneapolis. The RATC is the first project along the East Plymouth Innovation Corridor, also known as EPIC. Staples has been recognized locally, regionally, and nationally for his work in the green energy economy sector. So please join me in welcoming Jamez.
How we doing? Everybody still sitting down? You need a stretch? Okay, all right. So I'm the guy that's always late with everything, so my slides didn't make the cut. So, because I never even sent them in because I forgot. But I'll stand here and tell you all about the work that I'm doing and my team at Renewable Energy Partners in Northgate Development. I got into the solar business focused on the idea that we can address two of our world's biggest issues, climate change and poverty. Acknowledging those are two of our biggest issues, I sought to pick up on the work that Van Jones, anybody familiar with Van Jones? Anybody? Van Jones started talking about climate change, addressing climate change and poverty back in 2006 when he was nominated by the Obama administration to be the green energy job czar, but didn't get confirmed. And so what happens is a lot of times people start these things with taglines and they bubble with popularity, but then nothing really happens. And so for me, I'm a person that likes to get stuff done. And some people get mad at me because I'm very rigid sometimes. And I've pissed a lot of people off in that process. But I wanted to pick that work up and really actually do it, because here in Minnesota, I assume majority of the people here in this room live here and acknowledge that we have and know that we have some of the worst racial disparities here in the country. And I mean, if you need any evidence of that, hence George Floyd, right? And so, I started this work in 2013. I volunteered installing solar panels when I was on almost like a vacation kind of sabbatical semester in college, right? So I volunteered installing solar panels. I was taking classes. I took Caribbean geography, health and wellness, and got certified in scuba diving. So I figured I better do something that means something somewhere, right? And so through that process, when I came back in 2013, it was 2012, but 2013, Governor Dayton signed the Solar Energy Jobs Act, and that was a market signal for me. And to do what I was already doing for free somewhere, I could actually take that skill that I learned there, which was very repetitive. It didn't require a whole lot of skill and trades. And so my objective was I'm just really going to, acknowledging that we have these issues. I graduated from North High School. I'm a North High graduate, and so I'm still a North Sider. And so the stuff that you see on TV is not always all over North, right? It's not as bad as they make it sound, but being that's where a majority of African Americans live, that's where I wake up every day and I see these kids not having things to do. I see the people that need jobs, and I'm committed to it. And so through that process, when I came back, I signed the deal. I started Renewable Energy Partners, and I got on a roof with a cousin of mine and another guy that he knew after I joined Minnesota Solar Energy Association. And the people of that association were very empathetic of what my mission was. Even though we're for-profit, they were very empathetic. And so I was thinking to myself, if these people really believe in what I'm trying to do, others will too. And so they gave us a project to install. And so me and the two other guys, we got up on the roof and we were installing these solar panels. And I quickly realized these guys didn't know what they were doing, right? And as a for-profit entity, if you don't start to make some money, you quickly go out of business, right? And so what I did was I said to myself, well, if I'm going to build this business and create these jobs that I really want to create for people from my community and from other neighborhoods that are underserved also, we need skills and training. And so that started a whole thing, a 10-year campaign in which the government owned this building, which was the Workforce Training Center, which was a workforce center in North Minneapolis at 1200 Plymouth Avenue North. And so ideally, in my mind, I was like, the government says they want to fix these problems. Governor Dayton's talking about racial disparities. He's dumping a bunch of money to fix the disparities. Hey, you guys own this building. You should do it. You can take this building. You can bring the public schools. You can bring the community colleges. You can bring the building trades, and everybody can collectively work to address this problem, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? Get young people skilled up, trained for climate careers, knowing that these are growing, right? And it was interesting. I was baffled because I went out, I got letters of support from everybody. I mean, I had the commissioner of deed, I had mayor, I had the council members, and I quickly realized that, it wasn't as serious as they weren't as serious as what they seemed. And so that's when I had to buy the building, okay, a 22,000 square foot building, a guy that owns a duplex, right, a commercial building, and quickly realized that this is serious, right? And so what we sought to do, and what we have done up until this point, is we've started to do some fundraising. We have installed 175 kilowatts of solar on that roof. We have a 34 kilowatt battery storage system. We have electric vehicle charging stations on site, in addition to a stormwater management system and a heat pump that puts the gas utility on standby. And so, for me, this facility is accessible to folks of not just North Minneapolis, but anybody who can get to a bus because it's on the highest used transit line in the state of Minnesota. And so that's how we're ultimately really going to help create the workforce of the future, to create pathways of opportunity. While all the time I'm doing that, I'm also running a solar company. And so our objective is now to take the folks, some of those folks that go through those programs, and actually put them on some of these solar projects that we actually install. So I'm getting the note to wrap up. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you all listening, and you'll have a great night.
Thank you very much. I could talk to Jamez all day. I know that we're going slightly over, so I want to make sure that I introduce our next person. Please stick around to listen to her whole talk. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Heidi Roop, the director of the University of Minnesota Climate Adaptation Partnership and assistant professor of climate science. So she focuses her research and extension programs on combining advanced climate science with effective science communication. Her work, which ranges from Antarctica to California, aims to enhance the use of climate change information in decision-making at various levels. She is also the author of the Climate Action Handbook, a visual guide to 100 climate solutions. Solutions, we love those, for everyone, which outlines everyday ways to contribute to climate solutions. So we thank you for that. Please welcome Heidi to the stage.
Of course, they save the climate scientists for last. You know, doom and gloom, right? I'm going to move because I think this crowd's neck. We're going to pivot a little. So I'm going to come over here for this, and I'm going to be brief, and actually I need the clicker. So you think I would have watched this enough times to know how this works. So my name is Heidi. I have a lot of who I ams in my work. One of the identities that I bring is as a scientist, but as someone who thinks about climate, its impacts, and most importantly, how we move quickly toward every solution possible. I want to share a little bit about my career and how it's really been a journey. I think when we're trained about selecting a career, when we go to, say, university, place where I am, we tell you have to sort of pick a path. You follow that path. It's not very winding. It's like the thing you do, the identity you pick. It's what it looks like, feels like, and what you will be forever. But I think what you've heard today is that careers are uncertain, and they can take different paths and pivot points. And I think we should be thinking about our careers as the way we think about our identities, right? They move and change over time. We evolve. And so I want to share with you a little bit about my evolution in my career from a scientist to someone who's a scientist really focused on solutions and people, the people who move solutions into actions at the scales that really matter, which you've heard about today, which is community. That can mean a lot of different things. So I challenge you to think about what is the community that your career influences, and it might be a multitude of different types of communities. So here I am doing science-y things. I don't wear a lab coat very often, so we're going to debunk that myth. Climate scientists don't always wear lab coats. I'm a good, Minnesotan. I have all the right gear to do a lot of the work that I do alongside my partner, and we'll get there, which is working in very cold places, like Antarctica on the bottom here. This is the edge of the East Antarctic ice sheet. The ice there at the surface is about 100,000 years old, but it changes over time. It's kind of like a taco. We don't have time to get into it, but we can talk about that in the hallway. That ice is like a taco, just imagine. Now you're going to think about that the whole rest of the time. And on the top there, that's the margin of the Greenland ice sheet on the west coast of Greenland. And I have had the privilege of spending a lot of my career going to places like Greenland and Antarctica to develop a deep understanding of the climate system, how it works, how it's worked in deep time, and more importantly, to contextualize how we know that today is so profoundly different than the geologic past. It's from records like this that we recover from Antarctica that we know that climate change is caused by us. It's tiny little gas bubbles, and I'll show you that too. But we also know that today is different than the climate of the last several million years. And in fact, right now at the University of Minnesota, along with 15 other institutions around the country, we are on a race to locate and recover the oldest ice on the planet. We have an idea where it might be in Antarctica, but we are bringing together a bunch of different flavors of nerd to actually find it. And we will have a chance to drill 1 CD diameter hole to recover that ice. So talk about needle in a haystack. So we get to do fun things like that. And being a scientist might sound really, fun, but I'm going to just show you 3 scientists collecting a sample of ice in Antarctica. So there's me in the middle with my bibs. That's actually my husband there in the red jacket, and this is a colleague of ours, Sarah. Peter and Sarah are both actually in Antarctica at the moment, doing various things like this. But you can see it's taking 3 of us. The longest part of this video is us actually with a rubber mallet. Sort of like how many scientists to screw in a light bulb. Well, here you go. How many scientists does it take to get a sample of ice outside of a core tube? See, you can still go. We're still tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Oh, there, finally, we got it, right? This is a 6-second clip. It took us about 30 of those seconds just to get the ice out. So this is all to say not all science is glamorous or fun, and not all of it is math. We need a lot of skills out in the field, right? This is actually a really cool contraption designed by engineers who thought creatively about how can we go take something off the shelf at Lowe's, attach a few things to it, and then make sure it works in super cold conditions and that 3 people like Peter, Heidi, and Sarah can actually make it work. So we need all sorts of people oriented towards helping us do this work. Just briefly, when we do science, unexpected things happen. This is a sample of ice. The air in there is about 50,000 years old. Those little bubbles contain direct samples of ancient atmosphere. They're great for science. I can also say they're really great in a whiskey. They pop. It's lovely. You're like being sprinkled with ancient air. And if you're a scientist like me, you think about just how amazing that is, and you spend a lot of time contemplating bubbles. But weird things happen, like you meet people who you really love. This is my husband. We met in Antarctica. Like I said, he's away right now, so these things come with their challenges. He's been away since October 28th in Antarctica. Only we have made a chain, one of those ring things you usually do, paper chains. My daughter and I made one this week to count the number of days till we see him. It's 17 as of today. So, as with any other good scientist, you fall in love, you go on this adventure, and then you have a crisis. I think this is true, scientists or otherwise, right? We have career crises. We wonder, what are we doing? Does it even matter? How can I make a bigger difference? Does anyone care? Why is my boss such a jerk? Just kidding. Or not. So this is me in front of 1,000 people, and I honestly did, in that picture on that edge of that Greenland ice sheet that I showed you, had a crisis. I loved what I was doing as a scientist, but it didn't feel like enough. I needed to do something different, and I knew there was a new path and pivot in my career I needed to take. I had no idea what that was. I still don't. I'm on this journey. I'm figuring it out, flailing through this journey. I see some of my colleagues in the crowd. You can nod furiously. Heidi is still flailing to figure it out. But somehow I landed on thinking about how we move science into action. How do we actually do things like make sure when I'm studying the Antarctic ice sheet, how quickly it's going to go away, we're actually using that information to, say, design pump stations in communities that are at high risk of sea level rise in places like Seattle. That's actually a pump station that for the first time used sea level rise science to inform how it was sited and built. So it's resilient to the future we know, frankly, we've already set in motion. I now get to work at the university and work on solutions. I work with a great team of people who are really thinking about how do we move science into action, and in doing so, how do we close the gap between the climate future we know we've created, the climate future we are rapidly trying to avoid through greenhouse gas mitigation, and preparing our communities for those changes that we know we've already set in motion, like sea level rise. We know from Antarctic science, sea levels are going to continue to go up in only one direction, up, for the next 1,500 years. We have to prepare. So we work on closing the resiliency gap. We focus on solutions. Many of you have seen some of these things before, but I was asked to share a win, and I'm going to share this win. It's a team win, and that will be my last slide because I know I need to wrap up. But thanks to investment from the state of Minnesota and a range of partners from across the state, The University of Minnesota Extension is building a program that puts climate expertise across the landscape, focused on climate preparedness and climate risk response in the sectors that matter most and in communities, so that we can leverage science and solutions and move quickly as possible. If we are writing a comprehensive plan in a community, it should include climate, but how? Who's going to help? We now have the capacity and resources to do that. So I'm very excited to be helping build a program that's putting this climate expertise on the landscape through the Extension Service, so that we can help our communities understand their risks, manage it, and then unlock the state and federal resources that are now available to implement solutions. A lot of people know they have problems. We got to move towards doing something to solve those problems. So that's where we are hoping to be a bridge. Keep pointing in the wrong direction. Maybe not. Lily, next slide, please. So I have to wrap up, and I think we've heard from a lovely group of people, and I know many of you in here have climate careers in some way, shape, or form. I was asked to give some advice, and that is surround yourself with awesome people. Because we can't do this work alone. We can't sustain this work alone. We may not all find love in Antarctica, but I think we can all find those people in our lives, in our careers, who move us to be better, who can be in this team sport with us, so we can think and deploy creative approaches, new skills, and critically solutions that work in the place and space where we are, and challenge ourselves to do better, be bigger, and make sure every career is a climate career. Thank you. Just hand you this. Okay.
Thank you. I can't end any better than that. So I will just give a final round of applause to all of our incredible speakers. Thank you all so much for being here and imparting your wisdom, your knowledge, your actions, and sharing your stories with us. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for being here and being an incredible audience. Please stick around. If you are signed up for the Gloria Walton panel, please stick around for it. If you're not, I think that there's still space, so you're welcome to stay. I'm really excited to hear her speak. Again, our speakers will be in the hallway. If you have any questions, make sure to check out info for the next sessions or register for future sessions. The festival goes into the 4th. There's plenty to do. There will be a whole another day of climate solutions as well tomorrow, so please sign up for those. It's absolutely free. If you're not sticking around, make your way to Fika for food and more conversation. And then again, last plug, we are a nonprofit. Go ahead and scan the QR code and donate to our cause. Thank you all.